Hey everyone, my name is Michael and today I want to dive into the type extension API that we have completely redone in Hot Chocolate 14. Before we get started, I have a new course on DOM-Train, Getting Started with GraphQL in .NET. This is not the typical Getting Started course that you find everywhere else. With over 7.5 hours of content, it teaches what GraphQL is, but also dives deep into patterns and best practices, schema design, and schema evolution. The first 300 of you who are getting this course will get a 20% discount with the code STYPE20. If you want to dive even deeper, you can join one of our online workshops where the Core Chili Cream team teaches you everything we know about GraphQL from backend to frontend. And because I'm launching a new course on DOM-Train, I'm chipping in a 30% discount on all of our online workshops. Check out our online workshops on learn.chilicream.com. All the links and information you can find below the video in the description. If you like our content, please hit the like and subscribe button below the video. And with that, let's dive in. So I have here an API, that's our catalog API that we use in our online course on DOM-Train. And this is actually the products catalog of a web shop. We have a couple of type extensions here already defined, but let me actually first start the server and then I'll walk you through and we can introduce a type extension for the products type. So we start here our catalog API. Let's go to Banana Cake Pop and then we can create a quick request here. And I'm getting here all the products. So let's pick the nodes and then we're gonna take the name. And then we already can see there are tons of properties. For instance, there's an add stock method. This add stock method is actually on our domain type and is not supposed to be in our read queries here. So this shouldn't actually be there. We also have brand ID. Actually, brand ID I don't want to have here because I have the GraphQL way, which is a connection to brand. And then I could grab the ID from brand. And there are tons of other types that I don't want to have. For instance, image file name. Let's run that. And then we get here a file name, but where do I get the file? That's actually not what I want. And that's typically where in Hot Chocolate we had two concepts to deal with that. Or more even, if you will. We could have taken an object type. And with a product type, we typically have here our descriptor API with which we could, for instance, just say that we want to define the fields explicitly, and then we could choose the fields that we want to have in our schema. So for instance, name. By doing so, I can explicitly opt into the fields I actually want to expose. But this becomes quite cumbersome if we add also connection fields to it that we want to extend. In this case, we would either describe here an existing field, like brand for instance, and then we would introduce a resolver here that introduces the functionality for this field. But it's actually quite nice to have a method here that represents this field, right? Get brands, for instance. And then I actually want to use that. And we could do that. We could refer to this field. We would introduce here the generic to product type. But since this is static, we would need to undo this and make this an instance method here, an instance resolver that we can now address. Then we have to fill in all the default stuff in here. And it's kind of ugly, but it's also good, empowering to have this functionality here. The other way we could do that is actually by introducing a type extension. In this case, we would introduce a static class here. Let's call it product node. And then on top of that, we would have the extend object type. We would refer to the product here as the type we want to extend. And then we could introduce here our resolver like this, and that would be integrated, merged with the actual type. We can also then ignore things. We could up here feed in all the things that we want to ignore, but this is kind of ugly. And you never know if you introduce a new field, if that is then bled into the GraphQL type by accident, and then you have to remove it. And it also can become quite cumbersome to do that. What I really would like, and that's what I often thought, is to have the best of both worlds, to have access to the descriptor in an easy way, but for the most part, really use the extend object type API. And that is actually what we did in Hot Chocolate 14. We merged these two into a new type. So now we can, instead of having this attribute, we introduce a new attribute, and we did that mainly to leave the old API intact. So in this case, we are defining an object type here, and we say it's a product. And I put that on here, and you can see that we have now an error here. You can see a split object type class needs to be partial, and that's a hot chocolate error. It doesn't have yet the final hot chocolate error code, but it's already in the preview and you can use it. So you can see this is wrong. We have to make this actually a partial type. And this is because we are generating behind the scenes the code for full object type. So basically for this guy here. And the nice thing is that you can opt into the configure API. You have a configure hook in here. And I can do that by say that I have here this partial, and then you can see this partial configure method. So it's also not a guessing what method you have to put in, because we generated all the hooks as partial methods, and that makes it easy with IntelliSense to see the hooks. In this case, I can opt into this hook, and I could say, for instance, that I want what I had before, like all fields defined explicitly. And that means I can also copy these guys here and then get rid of the above type. So what makes it nice is that I can add here any field, and that just becomes a field on the type. So that is implicit. So if I, for instance, introduce here a product type connection, then this is just there. I don't have to declare it. Also, if we override here the image path with an image URL, this just becomes available on our GraphQL type. Everything that we have up here is also included. So I have to choose what I want from my model. That is what I picked here from my model, and everything that I have on my type extension is automatically included. So let's rerun our GraphQL API, go to Banana Cake Pop, refresh this thing, and then you can see that we have here, this field doesn't exist anymore. So I have now image URL here, and you see I have here a reduced amount of fields now, because that is what I allowed in my type extension, like all the fields that I said I want to include them. And also all the fields that I have as extension method on there. And this is a much sleeker experience now with types. Still, you can use the old APIs. They're still in there. And this is totally opt-in, but it gives you so much more flexibility now. And if you really need something from the Fluent API, you can just use it now here in this hook. And you don't have to run around hoops to get to the same result. So what do you think about our new type extension API? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Sound out in the comments. Also, if you want to help our project, please go to GitHub and give us a GitHub star. A GitHub star is the easiest way to help our project grow, and is the easiest way to contribute really to any open source project. So star the open source projects that you are using. And with this, I'm out.